Hello everybody, I'm Mark and welcome to Life in France. Life in France versus life in the UK. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and don't forget, hit the red button so you don't miss any future releases. In today's video, I'm going to discuss some of the horror stories of running a holiday cottage in France. I've been running the cottage now for 15 years and it's normally just 1 week per year that we have troublesome guests. So for the majority of the time, you know, we sort of rent our place out for anything from 24 to 30 weeks a year. So there's normally only 1 guest per year that we have any problems with. And I'll also share some horror stories that I heard from the previous owners as well while running a holiday cottage in France. So let's get started. I guess my favourite story was we had a couple, well, we had a family stay for 2 weeks, and they arrived in a Mercedes and also one of those Rovers that look like a Jaguar, and I've greeted them outside the house and they've all come by me, shook my hand, I've said, "Hi, I'm Mark, how are you?" and they've all gone by. And then the last chap to go through was the dad, and he didn't say hello or anything. He just stopped, didn't shake my hand. He said, "Oh, the swimming pool. We want it open at 6 o'clock in the morning, please." So I had to explain to him the reasons why the swimming pool was open at 10 o'clock rather than 6. One, because obviously it was a shared pool at that time and we didn't want guests screaming and shouting in the pool at 6 o'clock in the morning because it would interfere with the peace and tranquility of guests in the other house. I also explained that in order for me to keep the swimming pool warm, it was important to keep the pool covered until 10 o'clock in the morning. And also for general maintenance and cleaning. You know, I normally start at 9 o'clock in the morning, check the pool out, clean it, add any chemicals before the guests start using it at 10 o'clock. So I had to explain that to this chap, and he just shook his shoulders and went, "Huh," and walked off back into the cottage. So I've gone back into my house and I thought, oh, they're here for 2 weeks. What on earth am I going to do? Let's try and build bridges. So I went outside again and he's unpacking his car, his imitation Jaguar. And I said to him, "So, how was your journey?" And he turned round and said, "To be honest, any journey when you have lovely cars like this is going to be good." And I thought, no. I've got this guy here for 2 weeks. What am I going to do? And I tried throughout the 2 weeks to build bridges with this chap. Ex-bank manager, what can I say? And it just wasn't happening. And they paid for a clean, a top-up clean for the end of their stay. Now, a top-up clean, all that means is they can get up in the morning and have their breakfast, get showered and go. It doesn't mean, though, that they don't clean the cottage for the whole duration of the holiday, 2 weeks, turn it into a pigsty, and then leave. That would be a full house clean. And normally a top-up clean would take anything from an hour and a half to 3 hours to do, whereas a full clean could take 6 hours plus. And what we tend to do is, if someone has paid for a top-up clean, we just have a general rule. If it takes more than 4 hours to clean that cottage, then it becomes a full clean and we have to make a supplement charge. And we make the guests aware of that. And I was in the garden one day and I just knew this chap wasn't going to clean the cottage. And sure enough, they left it in a right state. And when it came to giving their deposit back, I said, "Look, unfortunately, you did leave it in a state. So we're going to have to charge an additional €30 to pay for the extra cost of cleaning." And he was up in arms, swearing at me. He wanted to go on the phone with me and I just wouldn't talk to him on the phone. And thankfully, legality-wise, it was his wife that booked. So every time he tried to speak to me, I just said to him, "Sorry, I don't have a legal contract with you. I have a legal contract with your wife. If your wife wants to speak to me, I'll speak to her. But I don't have to speak to you." and he was fuming. And there was one particular Christmas, I actually got an email from him. He must have been drunk, judging by the writing. But he did it with a lot of innuendo. He sort of said, "Oh, just to let you know, Mark, I hope your business is doing really well. And me and my 2 sons are coming over to France for a shopping trip. Perhaps we'll swing by and give our regards." Basically, it was a threat. What an idiot. So that's one of my most memorable worst guests. Another one we've had, these were guests from Scotland. They were fine throughout the holiday and we got on really well with them. And that's the other thing that I found with running a holiday cottage. Sometimes the guests that you get on really well with are the ones that let you down. And, you know, we got on really well with them. They had a couple of children that played with our children. And, you know, I spent a lot of time giving them advice on best places to go and what to do and see in Brittany. And I really put myself out to welcome these people. And they never said anything throughout their holiday. And they had also paid for a top-up clean. And departure time is 10 o'clock in the morning. And at 5 to 10, the dad, with the 2 children, have gone into the swimming pool. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And I went out into the garden and said, "You do realise it's a 10 o'clock departure time?" "Oh yeah, we just promised the kids we'll have a short dip." And they literally jumped in the swimming pool, got out again, and then went into the house. They left 10:05. When I went in there, the whole house was dripping wet with footprints. The place was an absolute pigsty. And the worst thing was they'd had a fire. They'd had a fire during their stay and they hadn't spoken to us. Now we've got new guests coming in at 4 o'clock. And what they had was the baking tray inside the oven. There was all like burnt plastic on it. So I think they've probably had a ready meal and it's burnt. And they've taken the fire out of the oven and put it on top of the table. And it's actually burnt onto the table. They never said anything to me. So I've gone into the house just to do my inspection. And not only is it filthy, it's covered in water and there's a burnt mark on the table. That's so big. And the tray still had melted plastic on it. And they never actually spoke to us about it. And do you know what? They even complained when I said, "Unfortunately, you've lost your deposit because we're going to have to buy a new table." But the annoying thing was, if they'd have told me that they'd done the damage, I could have bought a new table and had it ready before the new guests arrive. And that was the thing that I dislike the most, because, you know, people book a holiday and they have all these expectations of how nice it's going to be. I don't want anyone to turn up with a table that's damaged. You know, I want to make sure that when people come to our cottage, everything is perfect. And that's why, you know, we're so good on keeping the house clean for our guests. You know, a lot of people say how immaculate the cottage is when they arrive. And, you know, that's the standard we like to set. I make sure the swimming pool's immaculate, that it's clean, that it's warm and it's looked after. Same with the garden. The garden's immaculate. So many guests say, "Mark, who does your garden?" And I get so much pride returning it, saying it's actually me. You know, I've designed the garden and it's me that looks after it. That's the sort of standard we've set ourselves, and that's why it's so disheartening when people don't tell us that there's been a problem, and then you've got to rush round and try to get it fixed before the next guests arrive. And that's the thing I don't like. Guys, another thing I found from the previous owners was they told me a story where someone's swimming pool was leaking, and at the end of the season they had it drained and they found some sort of like horseshoe shaped cuts at the bottom of the swimming pool. So they called out the pool people and they said, and they explained it's something they see often. People have been using the brush for the swimming pool to pole vault across the pools. They've taken the brush off and they've got the poles and they're pole vaulting across from one side to the other, not knowing that they've cut the pool liner and now created a leak, and now have put a cost of €2,500–3,000 to the owners of that cottage. And that's one of the reasons why we like to keep an eye on what's happening in the cottage, you know, just to make sure that guests aren't pulling the sunbeds close to the edge of the swimming pool and diving and jumping off of there, because that's not on. So, you know, you have to make sure that you look after your guests, but also watch that your guests are looking after your property, because at the end of the day, you know, they've paid £1,000 a week for a holiday, but the potential for them to make damage and cause harm to our property is a higher risk. So, you know, it goes both ways. You know, we make sure that our cottage is good for the guests, but in return we expect them to look after our property, and unfortunately sometimes that doesn't happen. Guys, another mishap that we had with the swimming pool, we have like a bubble wrap cover to keep it warmer, and my job in the morning is to unroll it, and in the evening, just before dusk, I roll it back so that we retain all the heat within the water. And we had one guest one year said, "Oh Mark, would you like me to do that for you?" And I explained to them, no, it's my job, please let me do it. And the next day he's unrolled it in the evening after he's finished and torn it. There's basically a locking mechanism on the roller and he didn't undo it. So he's just pulled the bubble wrap off, ripped it all apart, and it's cost me €500 to buy a brand new one. And then he felt disgruntled that I asked him to pay, initially I just asked him to pay for a repair kit, €30, and I tried to glue it together and make a repair. Unfortunately that didn't hold, and I ended up having to be out of pocket some €500. So I think for €30 he did quite well. Yet he was so disgruntled because I said, unfortunately that's what the security deposit's for. You know, you've damaged part of the property, I asked you not to do it, and you still went ahead and done it and therefore tore it. So, you know, that you're going to have to pay. But the fact that I only charged him £30 because I wanted to make it cheap for him, I actually come unstuck in the end because it cost me €500 to make the repair. We also had a family from Belgium staying one year, and we've got quite a huge play area for the children to enjoy for all ages, normally sort of from 1 to 10 years of age. And we've left our children's toys out there, and they had some little plastic sort of ride-alongs. And one of the Belgian boys, he must have been 14, and he's sitting on a 2-year-old ride-along toy. I was watching him, and after he got off, he picked it up, looked at it, and then threw it on the floor. And as he's then walked past it, he's given it a good kick. And he's then climbed up onto a children's climbing frame that's designed for children sort of up to the age of 8. Now this guy's 14 probably. And he's on the top of it, jumping up and down, showing how good he is at balancing on the top of this climbing frame. And his parents are there filming him. And then all of a sudden, the climbing frame breaks. And while I noticed that they were filming him climbing in the play area on the climbing frame, his parents were standing on top of the sunbeds around the pool area, filming him. And the following day I noticed that one of the sunbeds had been broken as well, because obviously all the weight was focused on one point. Now sunbeds are €100, and they put their foot through it because they were filming their idiot son jumping up and down on a climbing frame for children a lot younger than he was. And again, when they left, I told them that I'll have to take it out of their security deposit, and they kicked up a huge fuss, saying, no, we didn't do it. And then I had to explain to them that I witnessed them doing it. And it was only at that point that they backed down. Otherwise, you know, they just try to lie to you and say, no, it wasn't me. So, you know, you've got to be so careful with guests using your property. Guys, we also had one family stay with us. I've never seen the house in such a state. They put pots and pans back into the cupboard with food still on it. I think they were vegetarians, and there was literally vegetables stuck on the interior and exterior of pots, and they were put back into cupboards. And the bin, we've got a little pedal bin, lifted that up, and there was like liquid sort of sticky residue. It could have been wine, I don't know what it was, but you know, it was just horrible. And then the whole floor was just covered in crumbs. Underneath all the settees and sofas were food wrappers and food. The toilets were disgusting. The baths had all hair in. And it was just atrocious. And I went in because Naomi was doing the clean and she was actually in tears. She couldn't believe. And the thing is, you know that you've got like 6 hours to get the cottage ready for the next guests. And you look at like this bomb site of a house after the guests have left it. And you think, where do I start? You know, how am I going to get this done in 6 hours? But thankfully, Naomi's a miracle worker and she manages to turn them around. Sometimes just in the nick of time, and sometimes we've actually had guests arrive at 4 o'clock and we've had to say, I'm sorry, due to how the last guests have left the cottage, can you give us an extra half an hour? We want to make sure the cottage is perfect for your arrival, and unfortunately we need an extra 30 minutes. I don't want you to see the cottage before it's ready for your arrival. So we've actually done that sometimes, and I'd rather do that. I'd rather have the guests wait an extra 30 minutes to give us the opportunity to make sure the cottage is 100% perfect for them, because at the end of the day they're starting their holiday, which they've been thinking about all year long. You know, it's cost them a lot of money. We want to make sure that that cottage is perfect for their arrival. And the thing is, guys, a lot of times guests that leave the cottage in a state will then say, have you got proof? Where's the photographs? And we used to do that in the past. We used to take photographs of all the problems, but then the guests would turn around and say, oh, you faked it. We didn't leave it like that. You'll put that dirt there. As if I would put dirt in the cottage to take a photograph to try and get an extra 20 euros off of someone. At the end of the day, we want our guests to return. But the way I think about it, it's not about the money, it's the principle of the fact that sometimes people have deliberately left that cottage in such a state because they don't care about you. They don't care about us. They don't care that we've got to go and clear up the poo that's been left on the rim and the porcelain of the toilet, or the wee stains that are on the floor. You know, I can't believe some people would do that, knowing that perhaps it's us that have to clean it. You know, it's just, I can't believe the way some of our guests think. Guys, I know this sounds like it's been a nightmare. It isn't, because, you know, majority of our guests are perfect, and we've actually made some really good friends with some of our guests, and some of our guests come back a few times over the years, and we really do enjoy running a holiday cottage in France. But you do get the odd occasion where it does go wrong. And the thing that always amazes me is that, particularly in a lot of cases, it's the guests that you've done everything for. You know, you've really sort of gone that extra mile to make sure that their holiday is perfect. Sometimes those are the ones that let us down. You know, they leave the cottage in such a state. You know, they leave poo specks on the porcelain of the toilet. There's pee stains on the floor. Now, just out of respect, they don't know for sure that it's us that's cleaning the cottage or whether we have a girl that comes in. But surely you just, out of common decency, wouldn't leave faeces specks in the toilet bowl or pee stains on the floor. Surely you'll just have enough human dignity to clear that up yourselves, rather than allow someone else to come in and clean it. But unfortunately, some people pay for this top-up clean of 50 euros, expecting people to clear up their faeces and their urine stains. And that's the thing I don't like. The guests that I love are the Dutch. The Dutch guests will actually pay for a top-up clean, so they're expecting it to be someone coming in to clean up after them, and they actually leave the cottage cleaner than the Brits who decide to clean it themselves, because we give people the option, either pay for a top-up clean or clean the cottage themselves. And a lot of the cases, the Dutch will actually pay for a top-up clean and they leave the cottage a lot cleaner than the Brits who have actually decided to clean it themselves. Guys, there are also the guests that leave the cottage spick and span. You know, we go into the house and we haven't got to do anything apart from change the bed linen. The guests have done such a good job on cleaning the house before they leave that there's nothing for us to do. And that's another joy of running a holiday cottage, when you have guests like that. But unfortunately, not all guests are like that. Guys, the other problematic time for us in running the holiday cottage in France are rentals during the winter period, we found that they've always been problematic in that we charge next to nothing, just £250 for the week, but we can't do an all-inclusive charge for heating because the temperature during the winter months could range, say, 25 degrees. You can either have -15 or +10 during December and January. So you really can't sort of do an all-inclusive cost for heating. And we've had a few guests who've really taken liberties. I don't know whether they've used the oven to heat the cottage because our electricity bill's been sky high, or they've brought in their own electric heaters. But we go through wood, we go through probably 2 or 3 bags of wood per day to heat our house. And we have some guests that go through 1 bag of wood in 3 days. And I'm thinking there's no way they could be heating that cottage with just 1 bag of wood for 3 days. So how on earth are they keeping warm when it is very cold? And then all of a sudden we see huge electricity bills. So we've come to the conclusion it's not worth having these winter rentals anymore because people just take the mick. I've been running the Holiday Cottage now for 15 years, and it's only been the last 2 or 3 years that we've actually had French guests. And we've got on really well with the French guests, but the one thing I'd like to say is that they always rather pay the lowest prices and expect the most. And they never seem to adhere to our terms and conditions. Our holiday cottage is to sleep 6 people plus a baby. And we always find that they try to get an extra few people in. And we also say no dogs, and they try to bring dogs. There was one instance last year where it was a family of 4 adults and 1 child were going to stay in the cottage for a week. And when they arrived, 4 adults were there, plus a dog. And I said to them, "Where's the child?" And they said, "Oh, she's coming with her parents." And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you've booked for 4 adults and a child. Why is there now 6 adults here? Who are these other 2 people? And they said, "Oh, this is my sister and this is her boyfriend. He's come all the way from Italy. Can he come in?" And I said, "No, sorry. You've booked and paid for 4 adults and a child to stay for a week. You're not all of a sudden going to squeeze another 2 people into the cottage. They're all smoking cigarettes. It's a non-smoking cottage. Plus they've got this dog." And they said, "Oh, can they just come in while we wait for the..." I said, "No, they're not allowed in. Our terms and conditions prohibit anyone not on the booking form to come into our property." And I had to be really firm with them. And later on, the other couple with the daughter, their granddaughter, came. And I then had to have a 15-minute chat with the daughter who could speak English. And she was begging me to allow the aunt with her boyfriend, who's come from Italy, to come into the property. And I said no. And she got really upset. And in the end, as a compromise, I said, "I'll tell you what, if you want, you can have a couple of barbecues during the week and they can come in. But no dog. But if you want, your aunt..." And she said, "Oh, just 2? I was thinking perhaps every day." Talk about give an inch and want to take a yard. And I said, "No, sorry, that's not going to happen." And that was like within the first hour of their holiday starting. And unfortunately, it just put a downer on our relationship for the rest of that week. But it was just another prime example of the French not adhering to the terms and conditions by trying to get a few extra people in. There was another instance a couple of years beforehand where we had a French couple. We got on so well with them. I was having coffees with them in the morning, and both of them worked in the UK and the States, so their English was really good as well. And I had a really good time with them. And both our houses were being rented at the time. And halfway through their holiday, they were here for 2 weeks, he turned round to me and said, "Mark, we've got a friend who's staying half an hour from here. She's like a sister. She only lives 100 metres from where we live at home. Can they all come in and have a barbecue here?" And I said, "Unfortunately, no. It's just your party that's allowed to use the property. I can't allow another 6 people to come in, have a barbecue in the garden and use the pool. It's unfair on the guests that are staying in the other house." And he acknowledged what I said. The following day, this party of friends, his one that's almost like a sister, are sitting around the table having a barbecue. And I had to pull him aside and said, look, sorry, this isn't going to happen. You're going to have to ask your guests to leave. And I actually made them leave the property. I said, you're breaking our terms and conditions. If you don't ask these people to leave, I'll have to ask you all to leave. And unfortunately, you have to get that firm. And they did it. But, you know, talk about taking liberties. And when they did have their friends there for that barbecue, all of a sudden they couldn't speak a word of English. You know, for a week they've been speaking a lot of English with me. As soon as there's a hiccup and there was a problem, they refused to speak English, and they couldn't understand why I was saying, I'm sorry, your friends can't be here. It's unfair on the property. The property's not designed for having 12 people in. It's catering for 6 people. You're up to the maximum amount of people in here already. I can't allow these extra 6 to come in. And it's also unfair on the people staying in the other house. They couldn't speak a word of English. That same couple, guys, had 3 boys with them. And they were 14 or 15. And they wanted to use the gym. And under the terms and conditions, because I know how dangerous gyms are, I always say people have got to be at least 16 years of age to use the gym on their own. Otherwise, they need parental guidance within the gym. Basically, because a young lad will chuck on loads of weight, trying to do more than they can, and it can be very dangerous. Not only can they hurt themselves, they might even damage the gym because the bars are going to be flying everywhere. And they kicked up a right fuss that I actually asked for the parents to be there. Now, I'm into my training, and I said to them, as a sort of goodwill gesture, I'll tell you what, would you like me to train with your boys? And they said, oh, yes, please. So for the 2-week holiday, I trained with these 3 French lads in the gym, taught them how to train properly, trained every day with them. And every now and then, I asked the parents to be with them because I wasn't training that day. And they kicked up such a fuss that I was asking them to come in and look after their own children. And the worst thing was, at the end of the holiday, I said, oh, great, hope you enjoyed the training. They said, yes. I said, oh, so now you go back to Paris, are you going to start hitting the gym more frequently? And they turned around and said, no. I said, why is that? I said, we're too young to use the gym in Paris. Guys, just a bit of security for yourselves if you are looking to run a cottage. You know, if you go to a hotel in any foreign country, they always ask you for your passport, and they'll actually hold your passport during your stay, just in case you damage the property and they need to grab some money off of you. We don't actually do that, but the one thing I do is I take a photograph of the car and the car number plates, because we don't ask for passports, we don't ask to see it. So, to be honest, we don't really know who's staying in our property, because it could be false on the booking form. But at least if we've got a photograph of the car and the number plate, if we have to get in touch with the gendarmes, at least that's a starting point for them to investigate and chase up any problems. Oh, and that's the other thing I'd like to mention. It's always been drummed into me by the previous owners that gendarmes are very much working on your behalf. If you do have any problems with guests, you can always call the gendarmes and they'll sort them out. If people are refusing to adhere to the terms and conditions, causing a problem or a nuisance, and you've asked them to leave and they refuse, call the gendarmes, they will help. They're more than pleased. Guys, you'll find if you have a swimming pool, that could be one of the issues for a lot of problems with guests staying at your place. And the main one is the fact that we actually ask within our terms and conditions for no drinks or food to be taken into the pool area. Because at the end of the day, if there was a breakage around the pool area, it'd be an absolute nightmare to clear up. You imagine broken glass on the pool area, or actually let alone in the swimming pool, how hard that will be to clear. So we say to people, please, no food and drink around the pool, apart from bottles of plastic water. But the amount of times I've had to ask guests to leave, and that can be a real problem because they get a real huff over that. I remember one booking, we had a Dutch party stay for 2 weeks. They were looking to stay for 3, but they actually booked 2 weeks for both cottages. And when they arrived, they said that the pool was cold. It wasn't, it was 26 degrees, it's just that it was a very hot day. And I said, okay, don't worry, I'll cover the pool up at 10 o'clock and that will retain the heat for the following day. So I cover the pool up, and it's dark, and all of a sudden I see them around the pool. They've uncovered the pool themselves. They've moved all the sunbeds right to the edge of the swimming pool, and the two guys are drinking glasses of wine and smoking cigars right over the pool area. And I couldn't believe it. You know, firstly they said the pool was cold, so I made sure it was closed for them, which I don't tend to do in the summer months because the pool does retain its heat. But you know, I actually closed it that night because of, they said, of the temperature. And I had to go in there. This was on their first night here. I said, sorry, you know, you've asked me to close the pool and you've opened it yourselves. You're also drinking and smoking by the water. Please, can you leave the pool area? You know, the pool is now closed. It's 10:30 at night, the pool is closed. And they just did not like me asking them to leave. Turns out that one of their children had drowned in a swimming pool the previous year, and they'd actually come on holiday for the same 2-week period that they'd lost the child. But the thing was, which was unbelievable in my eyes, the parents were drinking heavily throughout the holiday, and all their children were in the swimming pool, some of which couldn't swim, and they were allowing 10-year-old children to look after the younger ones that couldn't swim. And I had to go to these parents and say, sorry, not on my watch. I'm not having a child drown in my swimming pool. Part of the terms and conditions of the swimming pool is that no children, and it's French law by the way, no children under the age of 10 or non-swimmers are allowed in the pool area without parental guidance. You need to come and look after your children. And they gave me such a bad time over that because they wanted just to get drunk and have a good time, have a jolly. And I thought, look, you've lost one child already. Are you really putting your children at harm's risk? And I just couldn't believe their behaviour. And that's probably one of the most shocking instances I've had in the last 15 years in running a cottage, in the fact that these parents were getting drunk every day, and they were allowing, or they were going to allow their children to look after the non-swimmers. And I said, sorry, this isn't happening. I'll close the pool if it comes to it. And eventually they'd take it in turns, the parents, to sit around the pool area to watch the children. I thought, I'm not having a death in my pool, no way. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this short video on the horrors of running a holiday cottage in France. If you did, please give it a big like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and if you haven't already, hit the red button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Take care everybody, stay safe.